Hey Kaylee, how you doing?
I'm good.
Forgot to turn my lighting on. Marcus, there he is. Very good. Jamaica, very good. I wonder if we'll be a small group today. How's everybody making out with your your writing and your homework assignments and stuff, as long as we're waiting for new folks to show? Anybody running into any issues? Everything good?
Everything's been good, at least for Marcus and I, for Blinding Lights, I would say.
Great. Great. Excellent. Okay. Good. Well, hopefully this will be a fun discussion, and you guys hopefully will have some of your own input, maybe from your own favorite movies and from your own scripts and so forth that you're working on. Maybe I should just go ahead and forge ahead. I mean, there's only going to be 8 of us, but what are you going to do? You can lead a horse to water. Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. So today, hello, I want to talk to you about your halfway point, your turning point in your script, and in general, just the turning point in screenplays overall. And, this will probably seem like a fairly obvious discussion, but I just wanted to show you some really fun and interesting products of my own research on this particular topic in preparation for today's discussion, and see what you think. So I will offer your homework assignments towards the end, but today we're talking about the halfway point, being fully committed or making that final commitment. This is the metaphorical cave discussion from the hero's journey, or the no turning back principle. And I've got an interesting thing for you guys to check out on YouTube after the lecture, and then a small reading assignment. This week, we will have another discussion post due on Sunday, where you will share your turning point with your colleagues broadly. And also on Thursday, I think that's the topic of the workshop, would be anybody who wants to discuss their turning point and the significance of that turning point in your screenplay. I welcome you to offer your work for conversation, and hope that you do. So I want to just refresh your memory here. If you're not subscribing to the Michael Hogue structure, if you're using some other structure for your stories, this is kind of my jumping off point always. His 6 stages of story, and then conversely, the hero's journey mapped over the Vogler story structure as well, because I kind of think they're interchangeable and they kind of come from the same direction. We're talking about this Act 2 thing that's going to happen here, this point of no return. We're calling it point of no return, significant or ironic choice, a decision on a plan of action, turning point, midpoint, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about basically the same thing. And so the one thing that emerged from some conversations over the new production documents from a week or so ago, and some things that I saw when looking at the homework assignments, was that there are some folks who still are in the planning process of what their story actually is. And I understand how that can be in the beginning. Just as long as you understand that at some point you really need to firm up what's going on in your story, what the direction of the characters is, how that might change, what their motives and objectives are, and so forth. I've got a buddy that I talk to all the time out in LA, and he was pitching something last week, and the first thing that these people ask is, what's your format structure, what's your plot, and where do you see that story going over a series of episodes or a series of seasons? And you have to be prepared for that question, even if your work is a work in progress. You have to sort of be ready to offer that answer, with a degree of certainty, to instill the confidence that you're going to need with these folks to get green lit. So there are some producers who believe that if you can't tell them your story in a sentence or two, that there probably isn't one, or at least not at that point. So either the concept has to be ironclad, or you have to have some other supportive document that's going to help them give you a shot in the absence of the obvious story arc and so forth. So backstory is something you don't necessarily have to show in your existing script, but it should be alluded to somehow, and there should be some reference to it, and ways that we can sort of derive the motives of our characters through their actions and so forth by knowing something of this subtext. You're going to have a catalyst in your act one somewhere that's going to start. It's going to start off your adventure. You're going to start from a setting that is in balance, and you're going to move to a condition of imbalance through the introduction of this catalyst or this inciting event. You can have several inciting events. You can have a big event that changes the central character's life and their way of thinking or their direction that they're moving in. That's going to carry you into act two. And somewhere in act two, you're going to have all of these conflicts, all of these challenges that the characters are going to meet, face, succeed, maybe not succeed in the evolution of their arc through the story to this point we're at right now, which is a midpoint. And in the midpoint, there's a couple of things that are happening. So halfway through the script, there's maybe a major plot twist, some relevant situation comes about. It's the point of no return for your character. So this is a choice or a decision that's made for the character, a plan of action that they have to adopt, maybe foreseen, maybe unforeseen. And there's going to be a sense of no turning back, that once you cross this threshold, that your character will be forever changed, can't go back. Okay, so this requires full commitment. It requires their sort of recertification of their of their desire, of their motives. A strengthening has to happen, a gathering of their assets, resources, friends, and forces, and they move forward to solve this problem. So the midpoint is really, really important. And it's not just called the midpoint because it's the center of your plot concept, but I'm going to show you how it also tends to be, in a well-balanced script, the middle of your written document as well. And I have some interesting examples to show you to support that thesis. After your midpoint, obviously there is remaining crisis, resolutions, the ultimate climax or showdown, and then the realization or the elixir where your character has learned something from their experience, and we have a new outlook, a new way of life, success or failure, and this is the ultimate, the finale of your story arc. I like Michael Hoag's videos on YouTube. I refer many of them to you, and I select the ones that are easy for you to get through, that aren't too long and laborious. He's got a good discussion on the point of no return in your screenplay, and I have positioned that on YouTube in your videos to watch. So there's only a couple of them for this week. It's Michael Hoag's Point of No Return, and then a really interesting video essay from Michael at the gosh, what's his website called again? It's the Lessons from the Screenplay. Sorry, I got a lot on my mind today. So I think that if you check that out, I think you'll enjoy both of those. The one, the lessons from the screenplay discussion centers on the film Collateral. Have you all seen Collateral, the Tom Cruise movie from about 10 years ago? Well, actually, it's more about 15 years ago by now.
Michael
Um,
Mann.
Real
Yeah.
interesting movie. It was Michael Mann's first foray into digital cinema acquisition. They shot on Sony F900s, Thompson Grass Valley Vipers, and film. And the DPs kind of switched midway through the film. So Paul Cameron started shooting the movie. Dion Beebe came in and finished the movie. And it was a real interesting landmark film for a lot of reasons. Also, a very interesting and well balanced story. So visually, it's got a lot of things going for it. A lot of interesting history, not only about the first digital cinema film from Michael Mann, but it was a major push on the part of Michael Mann and his coalition to sort of usher Hollywood into accepting the digital mode. Up to that point, you know, arguably the only other person of note who was doing this was George Lucas. He was an advocate of the Panavized F900 digital platform that the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, were photographed on. And otherwise, the industry was kind of dabbling in digital until Michael Mann said, if we're going to do it, let's jump in all the way. And Collateral, I think, is a really interesting byproduct of that decision. But anyway, I'm on a tangent here. I think you'll enjoy Michael Hoag's video. I think you'll enjoy lessons from the screenplay as well about Collateral. In the meantime, I have 4 sort of classic examples of this midpoint, point of no return concept. And the first one I want to start with is Jurassic Park. So I'm pretty sure everybody's seen Jurassic Park, right?
Yes,
I
sir.
hope so. If not, I won't give too much away. But I think even from the logo, you know that there's a T-Rex involved, so that's not going to spoil it for you, hopefully. So within the structure of Jurassic Park, and the screenplay was written first draft by David Koepp, by the way. Always give attribution for the writers that create our intellectual property. Okay, so if you're looking at your plot structure, now Jurassic Park has a little bit of a convoluted plot structure that goes beyond simply 6 stages. But in essence, the turning point is going to happen at the midpoint of any screenplay, virtually, no matter what structure you're working on. It's going to happen in scene 50, and it's roughly page 78 of the script. And I have the script here. So what I wanted to do was take you through it and show you where that midpoint is happening. I'll give you a few details about Jurassic Park if it's been a while since you've seen it. Michael Crichton and David Koepp. Okay, those names should sound familiar, at least Michael Crichton anyway. The movie is 120 minutes long, so it's a 2-hour film. And at the 63-minute mark is roughly where we have scene 50. Okay. And well, actually, it's not scene 50. It's a little bit before scene 50. It's the moment where they find a T-Rex claw, and they know that there is a big apex predator somewhere on the island, and they haven't seen it yet. Now, some folks in intellectual circles are calling that the midpoint of the film. I really don't think so, and I'm going to create a pattern here that I think you'll see resonates with my theory, and that is that the claw is simply foreshadowing, and the presence of an artifact like a claw doesn't guarantee the existence of a living animal. So what follows is one of the biggest arrangements in film history, the famous T-Rex battle. This is a good rule of thumb for midpoints. If you're going to do a midpoint, make it a big and memorable moment. But it goes deeper than that because you understand what's happening. And at this point, we need to look at the movie's structure and see how we can divide that film in half. And there's going to be the first half of your film, which is going to have its own sort of rising action, motivations, inciting incidents. And then there's going to be a pivotal moment that everything is going to sort of change, and you're going to start that slow and steady up, journey towards your climax. And in these 4 examples, you're going to see where that also happens to line up with the point where the audience and the characters in the film meet their antagonist for the first time. Okay. So, and it just so happens that we've got Jurassic Park, Jaws, okay, 2 of the same directors, and then we have James Cameron and we have Peter Jackson. So they're all kind of following the same schools of thought here. So I thought I'd lead off with Steven Spielberg as a result of that. So in the first act of Jurassic Park, we go to the island, we see the world, it's all set up for us. We meet the doctor, we are shown around the facilities, we're shown the technology, we're introduced to the science, then they're given
No.
rounds, and so they see the
Okay.
world do and such that it is.
I think it's basically the same. It's
I heard
just
somebody,
different smells.
Somebody's microphone is open. There we go. Thank you. So we get the nice setup, and we get the asymmetrical look from the midpoint towards the beginning, where we get all of the setups and meet all the characters and find out what's going on. The second act of Jurassic Park, there's a complete shift in the movie now. And we see how it affects the characters. We see how their motives all start to change. And it hinges on this one seminal moment. And it has to do with the T-Rex paddock. So let me show you the moment in time where we see this. So this is scene 50, exterior Tyrannosaur paddock, night. Okay, so if you recall, Dad and the kids and this fellow who is, I guess he's a reporter, who's played by Jeff Goldblum. They all kind of hop in the Jeeps and they go for a tour through the jungle to see some stuff. And they pull off the side of the road, and they have set up a bait station or a feeding station, as it were, for the T-Rex. And so they have their little tour and they see a whole bunch of exciting stuff. Then they pull up. We see, sign, electrified fence. The door can't be opened. Everything is armed. Okay. And so we get kind of some foreshadowing of what's going to happen. Then in scene 50, okay, we're going to meet the T-Rex. So up to this point, we have seen dinosaurs. And we've kind of seen the velociraptors to some extent, but we're not sure, or we don't realize that the velociraptors represent a secondary threat to the characters. But what we've seen the veggie eaters, we've seen the long necks, we've seen all of the creatures that are running around on the little grassy areas on the island, and we've had this sense that, wow, it's really, they've really done this. The science really works. And it seems to be a very pastoral setting where these scientists have managed to, recreate these animals. And it's going to be a really great petting zoo kind of situation. But, in the back of everybody's mind is, well, these aren't all the dinosaurs that ever existed. So what versions have you found? What versions have you cloned? And we're sort of alluded to the idea that, there might possibly be, one of these guys running around, but it hasn't been alluded to. Nobody has sort of admitted it, but they've kind of said, yeah, we've cloned most of what we understand and we know from history. And therefore it's in the back of everybody's mind. Well, oh God, are we going to meet a T-Rex? And so they've put a little goat out on a chain, and he's tied up on the outside of the fence, and the cars all sort of pull up. And at this time in this scene, which happens to be page 78, and the total script is, as you can see up here on my Google Doc, 151 pages. So half of 150 is 75, right? And then we got this oddball page, and we're here at page 78. So we're pretty much halfway through. Okay. Scene 50, bang. The goat was brought up from the underground bleeding. The 2 explorers sit at the middle of the road in the cars. The rear car has conversation going on. They're talking about finding gimmicks, flashlights, and equipment in the Jeep. It's a couple of kids. There's a driving rain that comes, starts erupting from outside. And then they start hearing stuff, and they start seeing the trees rustling, and the trees are moving. And at some point, we've got this back and forth. The kids are starting to get scared. This is starting to feel a little too real. And then we get boom, boom, boom. Okay. These are presumably the heavy footfalls of the Tyrannosaurus as he's crashing through the vegetation, sniffing out the goat that's been put out there for his evening meal. And what emerges from the jungle after a bunch of anxious shots and some very interesting photography is a T-Rex. And the T-Rex comes ripping through the jungle, 25 feet high, 40 feet long from nose to tail, with an enormous box-like head that must be 5 feet long by itself. And you can see we're already on page 82. So for 4 pages, we've had this prolonged moment of, oh, crap. Here's the antagonist, right? This is the apex antagonist in this film, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Okay. So from this point, they've had a really fun experience on the island. They've met a lot of docile dinosaurs, and they've seen a lot of incredible things. They're having a great time, and the weather's ideal. They're in Hawaii. And then they meet the T-Rex, and now the T-Rex is going to break free of his constraints in the subsequent scene. And he's going to mess up the cars. He's going to split up the group. They're running for their lives. And now from this point to the end of the movie, it becomes a fight for survival and escape, right? So it's the midpoint of the story arc. It's the midpoint of the script. And it happens to be the key moment where we're finally confronted by the prime antagonist, the T-Rex. Okay. It's only 2 minutes. Whoops. I have the clip here for you. And we can take a look really quickly at the scene.
Absolutely still. This vision is based on movement. Turn the light off. Turn the light off. Turn the light off.
So you can kind of see that Stephen has once again gone off script a little bit. So in Jurassic Park, in this version of the script that I've got here, this whole business has started on page 78. The scene that I just showed you was just under 6 minutes long, and that's not even the whole moment that's been stretched out for 6 minutes. And so by page 82, 83, 84, the T-Rex is starting to mess up the trucks. Okay, this thing's running on for like 10 pages, and it's it's the whole moment where everything is just completely falling apart, right? And the T-Rex is determining how the rest of the story is going to go, because they have to set out on foot, and it's raining, and they don't have protection, they don't have weapons, they don't know how to get back to the base camp, and the whole thing becomes kind of a whole different movie at that point. So that's Jurassic Park. And I found that really interesting, that bang, you could go kind of right to the middle of the script like that, and find the seminal moment. So then I thought, well, okay, we talked about Jaws once already in the season, but it's also Steven Spielberg, and he goes off script a lot in Jaws. But it also kind of works the same way, and I think that might have been one of the things that attracted him to the story of Jurassic Park, because the story structure kind of worked the same way. So Jaws, remember, was written by Peter Benchley and buffed by Carl Gottlieb. Okay. And it's trying to follow, 3-act, 6-stage structure and everything. And it's kind of meandering around. And part of the problem was that he had budget problems, he had shark problems, he had location problems. And so he was kind of, in some cases, the reason why he goes off script so much is because he was kind of going by the seat of his pants at one point in terms of production. But in essence, what we've got is we have a story that has a similar feel to Jurassic Park. It's 122 minutes. And on page 52, we get the confrontation between Brody and the mayor of the town of Amity. And so this argument creates tension, and it creates a moment that Brody has to either stay subservient to the powers, the city authority, or he has to take matters into his own hands. He has to assert himself. And for about 18 pages, we go back and forth with a couple of things that sort of extend this moment of decision for him and sort of solidify his plan of action moving forward. And that happens to be, again, the antagonist emerges, and we see the antagonist in an omnipotent way for the first time. Just like in Jurassic Park, we get a clear view of the primary instigator at this point. The shark's going to eat somebody in plain view of a populated beach. And now everybody's on the same page. Yes, we have a shark problem. Yes, this animal is aggressive. And yes, it's eating people. And yes, we need to shut the beaches down, right? But up to that point, we've started in a world that's very peaceful. We have a couple of isolated incidents that happen sort of as an aside. Everybody's not privy to that information. The only guy who knows the running narrative is Brody, and his very tight little group that work around him. Even the town council isn't privy to the experience that Brody has. He tells them about it. They don't believe him. Amity's a peaceful town. They have a big spring break revenue potential. They've got a 4th of July revenue potential. And they don't want to let anything disturb the success and the sanctity of their holiday by closing the beaches and creating a scare that would drive people away potentially for, maybe generations, right? So up to that point, it becomes this slow burn, this steady buildup of Brody saying, we got a problem, we got a problem, and the mayor saying, no, 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 no. And at this moment, the mayor is going to say the beaches are going to stay open, and Brody has to decide if he's going to obey that order or not. And then by page 70, we have, it's the point of no return. So it's an interesting sort of dissection of this moment, because there's almost two things that happen sort of one right after the other that fulfill this notion of a turning point and no way back. Part 2 of No Way Back is when the kid gets eaten on the beach. Part A is Brody's choice. So it's kind of an interesting thing that develops here. But let me show you a couple of points in the script that are sort of revealing this to us. So, okay. This is page 70. This is page 70. Okay, let me go back to page 52 and we'll take a look at what's going on there. There's a scene where the mayor meets Brody on the side of the highway leading into town, and the mayor is upset that local vandals, presumably teenagers, have spray painted one of their billboards inviting tourists and visitors along the highway to swing into their town and have a good time. And so it is Exterior Island Highway Day. So it's right at the bottom of page 52. There's a billboard, and the deputy and the mayor and Brody and also Hooper, or at least Hooper from the standpoint of the finished film, they're all on the side of the highway, and they're debating whether or not there's really a shark, whether or not it's really eating people. The mayor keeps resisting and saying no. And the only thing that the mayor's really upset about is the fact that they took their beautiful inviting billboard sign and they defaced it by painting a shark fin over a bather who's depicted swimming in the water and enjoying the holiday. And they made it, they kind of goofed it and made it look like she's panicking and there's a shark in the water. And the mayor is upset, and he's like, make this right at all costs, because we're going to open these beaches. And Brody says, look, we can't open right now until we capture the shark or kill it. The mayor says, no, we're going to open on July. And Brody says, if we're lucky, we'll be able to save the August tourist rush, but July is already shot. And the mayor insists, no, you will open the beaches. I don't believe what you're talking about. And fix this, or I'll find somebody who can, essentially is what's happening in this scene. Okay. Hooper's having no effect. He's supposed to be supporting Brody's argument and telling the mayor what kind of animal they're dealing with. And the mayor's just not hearing it, right? It's a little bit like, no, COVID is a hoax, right? People are dying. 500,000 people are dead, but no, it's all somebody made up in the press, right? Those other people, they died of something we don't know, but why do we have to say it's COVID-19? Okay, it's that same kind of mentality. Okay, Brody doesn't like it. Brody is convinced that something's going on. Hooper is supporting that argument. And so Brody's kind of going behind the scenes, and he's sort of, he's bolstering his position by, in the script anyway, and in the novel, Hooper has brought his own boat to go shark hunting with. But it's a little sporty sort of speedboat, and it's not really the right class for going out and hunting a 30-foot shark. And Brody in the screenplay, in the final version of the film, hosts a town hall meeting, and he solicits the help of local commercial fishermen to help him in this endeavor. And they all kind of laugh at him and call him an idiot. Except for one character named Quint, who asks for $10,000 to deal with the problem. And Brody says, no, the mayor's not going to want to pay that fee. Okay. But when the mayor rebuffs Brody like that, Brody goes back and starts thinking about, he's now weighing the decision. Should I or shouldn't I buck their authority and do what I know is right, or do what I believe in my gut is right? Okay. He goes and he visits Quint in the script before the first shark attack. And I don't think that happens in the same order in the film. But he goes to Quint's residence and he meets this guy for real. He finds out this guy is a real hardcore shark hunter. He's been doing it for his entire career. He's a little bit of a quirky guy, but maybe he can work with him. This situation demands it. They have a back and forth. And Quint isn't convinced that Brody is really serious, and he senses Brody's sort of being on the fence about whether to hire him or not. Quint throws him a real FU quote, we call it, where it's like, I don't really want to do this for you, but if you pay me this exorbitant fee, I'll go ahead and do it for you anyway. Brody says that's ridiculous, and he storms out. In the subsequent scene that really turns it for him, though, happens a little bit further on when they go out to the beach, and all the people, it's like the next day, all the people, the bathers are out there, and they're splashing around in the water, and Brody's on the sand. He's with his wife, and they're watching everything happen, and he's monitoring the shark towers and all of his help along the beach, up and down the beach. And we see the shark enters the bathing area, and that happens right up here. Okay, swimmers and surfers, 151, 152. There's a TV crew following the story, but now it's big news. 153. There's a repellent line in the written work that's not in the movie itself. There's a boat with cops in it out on the water. Brody's on the beach with his wife, and Hooper's just kind of around in this particular scene. We're not sure quite where he is, but we've got the beach. Here we are, page 71, the beach and the bathers. Boats are all around. This is a lot of montage. And then we get the shark right in here, somewhere around shot 161, scene 161. Okay, the shark's going to come up and snatch a bather off of a pontoon raft, and there's a lot of blood, and there's, you know, and a lot of panic. And this is the moment where Spielberg decides to use his sort of what became one of his marquee cinematic shots, which is the reverse zoom on Brody, the horrific moment of realization where all of his suspicions are validated in this isolated moment. And he realizes now exactly what he has to do. And the camera gives us that interesting reverse zoom perspective on Brody's expression as he sees the bather get devoured in the surf. Okay, it's all kind of happening right here. Okay, so this is, you know, that's a long stretch from page 72 back to page 52, right? Where this whole thing started being set in motion. For 20 pages, he's extended this moment, and he's dividing his movie in half. And up to now, we've seen a woman get eaten, and we hear the music that indicates it's the shark, because initially we matched the music with the shark POV, and that's the only kind of sense of the antagonist we got. The shark has done some other things, created some mischief. He pulled some guys off of a dock, and he ate a fisherman and stuff like that. But we didn't really get a sense of the antagonist until 161. The shark kind of breaches out of the water, grabs the kid off of the raft, does a somersault, drags him to the bottom, and everybody around him saw it, and it's Brody's holy crap moment, right? Let me show you the clip so you get a sense of what that scene was looking like. So first, I'm going to give you the debate under the billboard, and you can see where this whole situation starts.
It have nothing to do with the bodies. The dead won't bother you. It's the living you got to worry about.
Oh, commercials. Come on.
Any shark expert in the world will tell you it's a killer. It's a man-eater.
Look, the situation is that apparently a great white shark has staked a claim in the waters off Amity Island. And he is going to continue to feed here as long as there is food in the water.
And there's no limit to what he's going to do. I mean, we've already had 3 incidents. 2 people killed inside of a week, and it's going to happen again. It happened before. The Jersey Beach.
1916,
5 people chewed up in the surf.
In 1 week.
Tell them about the swimmers.
A shark is attracted to the exact kind of splashing and activity that occurs whenever human beings go in swimming. You cannot avoid it.
If you open the beaches on the 4th of July, it's like ringing the dinner bell, for Christ's sake.
Mr. Vaughn, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the wrecked hull of a boat out there, and it was the tooth of a great white.
It was Ben Gardner's boat. It was all chewed up. I helped tow it in. You should have seen him. Where is that tooth? Did you see it, Brody? No, I didn't see it. He dropped it.
I had an accident.
And what did you say the name of this shark is?
It's a Carcharodon carcharius. It's a great white.
You don't have the tooth. Look, We depend on the summer people here for our very lives.
You are not going to have a summer unless you deal with this problem.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark. I mean, we're going to have to tell the Coast Guard.
Mr. Vaughn, you have to contact the shark
We're going to
research
put extra
panel.
deputies on because
You have to run this entire harbor.
I don't even
One
know
you
you are familiar with our problems.
I think that I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass. Now, wait a second.
Yes.
There are two ways to deal with this problem. You're either going to kill this animal or you're going to cut off its food supply.
Larry, we have to close the beaches. Brody, sick vandalism. That is a deliberate mutilation of a public service message. Now, I want those little paint-happy bastards caught and hung up by their Buster Browns.
That's it. Goodbye. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with a man who's lining up to be a hot lunch. I'm going to see you later.
Stop. He's not...
Mr. Vaughn, what we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine. It's really a miracle of evolution. All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks, and that's all. Now, why don't you take a long, close look at this sign? Those proportions are correct.
Love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name into the National Geographic.
All right, that's essentially the scene. So you can almost feel that in this moment, we've got Hooper making a very compelling argument about the shark, right? Claiming that the shark is going to become the biggest problem that this town has ever had. And Brody is our protagonist, right? And in this initial moment, what starts to happen is the exchange of one antagonist for another, right? So we have this initial antagonist who's not the main story. And we're gonna shift our focus from that antagonist who has been, you know, from scene one to now, and shift to the shark. The shark is now going to become the primary antagonist, and it's going to happen right here.
People need this symbol.
After this commercial.
Where do we start?
So after Brody acquiesces, they open the beach, they let everybody swim, bang, here comes the antagonist. And there's the shot. Okay, so there's the switch, right? So we've gone from the mayor being the point of aggression. Now it's the shark. Uh-oh, better kill that. Now it's the shark. Okay. This is an interesting confluence between the screenplay and the problems that can evolve from the physical production aspects of, you know, transforming the script into an actual film. Some of this had to do with the, you know, the logistics of making the movie. The script went through several iterations. The script deviates seriously from the novel, and the script also deviates in many ways to the finished film production. Okay, so it's an evolution within itself, from the novel to the screenplay to the actual film, made complicated by the reality of physical production. Okay, so I think it's a really interesting example on all of those levels to talk about what's going on there. Okay, So that's Jaws. So what else can I show you to convince you of this fact? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to juxtapose Titanic and Kong, because Kong functions very similarly. Okay. If we take the King Kong 2005 script from Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, with a buff up by Phil Boyens, we look for a midpoint in this script somewhere around page 73 out of 136 pages. Okay. Now, this is a concept that we are proposing, that King Kong could be two films in one, right? And it is based on the notion that the beginning of King Kong is about an actress in New York who's trying to get her big break. It's about a screenwriter who has been successful early in his career and is floundering for work post success or post accolade. We've got a Broadway producer who's looking for an opportunity, and that's one kind of storyline. Another storyline that we have is we've got this expedition leader, this guy who works for the oil companies, who makes a living on oil speculation and traveling over the globe looking for the next natural resource deposit to exploit. And we have his storyline going on. And all of these storylines are going to converge in the first half of the film, and they're going to make a movie. They're going to go with this guy on his expedition to some exotic island, and this producer is going to sort of contrive a film out of thin air using these playwright as his catalyst, and this beautiful young starlet who he wants to catapult to fame and fortune. And we've got that whole storyline sort of going on here. So in the beginning of King Kong, it's kind of functioning the way a lot of the other iterations of this film have transpired, with the exception of the most recent installment, 2017, which has a different story structure. Okay. But the setup is basically all of these folks get on a boat and they set out for high adventure. They find the island, they do a little exploring. It's very exotic and beautiful. In the process, we have the leading lady, Fay Ray, is starting to attract the attentions not only of her agent who got her the job, but also the screenwriter. And we have some sort of romantic parallel storylines happening there. And then they meet some natives on the island, and there's a confrontation between third world and first world as far as culture. The woman is abducted by the natives, and she is taken back to their village. So just like in Jurassic Park and in Jaws, there's a point where we're going to meet the antagonist at exactly the midpoint of this film. So King Kong 2005 is a 136-page script, and on page 73, like clockwork, we're going to meet King Kong. The scene is exterior wall grotto night, and in this scene, the major antagonist makes his first on-screen appearance in the film. Here, Faye is offered to Kong, and the story shifts from exploration to survival, rescue, and escape. Okay. Eventually, we save the woman and subdue Kong. That's our first resolution. But after the halfway point, we have this whole second film, which is they take King Kong captive, they bring him to New York City, they put him at a Broadway show. Okay. It's, the success and looks like maybe the return with the elixir, like this exploration profiteer finally comes back with something the world's never seen before. He's famous now. The playwright has written this whole dog and pony show for Broadway where he can sell tons of tickets and everybody's going to make him a wealthy man. The starlet gets her starring role in the public eye, which she always wanted. Everybody's happy, right? But then Kong escapes, terrorizes the city, busts everything up, reunites with the woman by finding her on the street, and spirits her away. He's trying to get back to the island. This is the second confrontation. Then the monster climbs the Empire State Building in an effort to get away from the National Guard. And when he does, there we have a second resolution, which is King Kong is defeated and he falls off the tower. Okay, so it's almost like two movies, right? So let me show you page 73 in the Kong script, which I have right here, and 137 pages with a title page, so 136 page working script. I'm on page 74 right now. Arguably, you could go back to on page 73 where the natives send a contingent to the boat and pull Fay Ray off the boat, and she's discovered missing by somebody on the boat. I think it's Jack goes to her room and she's not there. And then we cut to the top of the wall. The natives went right to business. They scooped her off the boat. They took her back to the village, and they cleaned her up and dressed her up and gave her all of the baubles and trinkets to make her enticing as an offering to the god Kong. And they have tied her to the plank thing that they're going to lower across the gorge to the other side, right? So we've got the flaming torches. We've got the flaming oil they spilled off the wall. The drums are beating. The natives are dancing. They're trying to entice Kong to come in out of the jungle and, you know, consider the offering and then hopefully take her away and be sated for another period of time where he will leave the village alone and not terrorize them. Here is the moment I have lined up for you. Shows you this point from the finished
As a
film.
cement mason, I use a Dove bar because I work with a lot of dust and dirt. Just washing the dirt and the grime off and just bringing you back to you. You see the glow? That's a Dove bar.
Dove cleans effectively, cares beautifully.
Okay. So you can kind of see how these three movies have a lot in common. And it's interesting, you know, Kong is 2005, right? Jurassic Park is what, like 1998, something like that. Jaws is 1974. You can almost see how the Jaws experience was pretty seminal in the way it taught us how to reveal antagonists, to extend moments of anxiety, to set up situations where the characters are driving these moments, and their inner demons, their wounds, their damage is affecting their decisions. I mean, in this film, right, up until the point where the antagonist switches to the shark, right? Brody's biggest problem was the mayor and his hard-headed stubbornness, right? And nobody in town really was going to listen to the dangers of a shark. Nobody cared. They all wanted to go to the beach and have their good time, right? It wasn't until the shark appears, eats the kid, everybody sees it. There's no denying it now. There's a shark out there eating bathers. That was Brody's point of no return. But it took us like almost 20 pages to get to that moment. And it started with the mayor making Brody take a stand, right? The mayor took a stand. That was his turning point, right? I think in the middle of his arc, where he's going to believe Brody or he's going to do what he thinks is right. And at that moment, he did what he thought was right, open the beaches. And then his story arc goes downhill after that because he's proven wrong and it's a disaster. Brody's introduced to his one of many inciting moments at this point, and he starts thinking, I got to make a choice here. And by 20 pages later, it's a no-brainer, right? I'm committed. He gets everybody out of the water. Everybody sees it. There's no denying it. The woman lost her kid. She believes it now. And what's he going to do about it? No turning back. The cat's out of the bag, right? Jurassic Park, we meet the T-Rex. The T-Rex smashes everything up, breaks the electrified fence, tips the cars over, sends everybody scattered and running. Their happy moment is over. No turning back. Kong, it's pretty much the same thing. They were all on the boat. They saw the island. They realized there was oil there. They were going to leave and bring back an expeditionary force with equipment and manpower and soldiers to take over the island and start pumping oil out of the place. And instead, what happens is the natives steal the girl, bring her to the wall, offer her to the monkey. Everybody goes, oh crap, there's really a monkey. And now we got to get the girl back. And the first plan's out of the water. And besides, the proceeds to that idea weren't going to be nearly as profitable as, holy cow, we found a 60-foot monkey, right? And now it's a different objective, a couple of different objectives. First, get Fay Ray back and get her back alive, and then capture the gorilla and bring him to New York to exploit him for profit, right? Couple of different movies, but everything sort of happens at the middle point. We think it's one movie, and then bang, something happens, and shoom, it's a different movie again, right? So my last example for you is Titanic, and I'm bringing up Titanic because it is the physical antagonist is the iceberg, right? There's an antagonist to the first half of the movie, and arguably the first half of the movie is one movie and the second half of the movie is another movie, right? So the first half of the movie is basically it's a romantic love story, right? Rich girl's engaged, hops on a luxury liner to go from Europe back to the United States. In the process, hobo kid wins tickets on the same ocean liner in a poker game. His life is about to change. Those two worlds collide on the boat while it's underway back to the US. Rich girl, debutante, meets poor kid with artistic ability and romantic point of view. Rich girl's fiance is a money-making sort of less romantic type, very serious, very sort of traditional, very restrictive She has the promise of one kind of relationship over here and a different kind of relationship with the unknown and love and affection and inspiration and spontaneity. And she's caught in this choice. Do I stick with the world I belong to, or do I abandon that and go with the promise of life renewed with different sorts of payoffs and different kinds of motives? And that's the movie up to the midpoint. And there's actually two midpoints in Titanic. So they happen one after the other. Again, this is Cameron, though, oddly enough. He's going to space this out over 10 or 15 pages. We're going to get one turning point, and then we're going to get a second turning point. The second half of the movie is all about the iceberg hit the boat is sinking. What are we going to do? Okay, so it's kind of two different movies, but it's going to happen on page 97 of a 187 page script. Okay, so let's look at those numbers again. Jurassic Park, page 78 out of 136 pages, I think it was. Jaws is page 52 and page 62, ending on page 72 out of 130 page final script. And this is page 97 out of 187, 99 for the second event. Okay. So we've got all that stuff happening. The first half is the love story. Then we hit an iceberg. The second half is the boat is sinking, right? Let's take a look at the first clip, the first turning point, which is, it involves the love story from the first half of the film. So it's when Rose decides, there's a moment in time where Rose has to make a choice. Am I going to stay with Billy Zane, or am I going to go with Leo DiCaprio? I've got to make a choice. And there's a catalyst in here, and it's the bodyguard played by David Warner, right? So he is Billy Zane's sort of man, he calls himself in the story, in the script, his sort of security guard attaché. And Billy Zane says, find my girlfriend. I know she's screwing around with Leo. She's somewhere on this boat. They couldn't be far away. Bring her back here, lock her in her room. I'm tired of these shenanigans, right? And at that point, Rose decides she doesn't like being treated like a prisoner, and that she thinks she prefers Leo's company to Billy Zane's at this point.
We now have intel inside the Westview anomaly.
What are we looking at here?
The sound, the dialogue's been turned off, by the way, hopefully to elude the censors who are looking for copyright infringement. I'm still going to have to argue it, I'm sure, but it's really about the moments more than the dialogue until the very end. So I'm sure everybody here has seen Titanic, right? I mean, this is not the first time you're hearing this, is it? Has anybody not seen the movie?
I'm sad to admit I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Well, I can recommend it, not only because of the conversation we're having today, but also it is a sort of it is a critical accomplishment. It won several Academy Awards. It really put Cameron on the map if he hadn't already been on the map from Terminator 1 and 2 and Aliens at this point. But it's also an achievement cinematically in terms of the cinematography. I have worked with Russell Carpenter. I've worked with John Weeks, the gaffer who lit the ship, and it really is on so many levels. It's a very significant film. It's also, it's a love story, but it's also a story we're all very familiar with. We all know the Titanic hits an iceberg and sinks. And that's all well and good, but it's also this other story that Cameron has managed to thread into the parallel storyline of the tragedy and turn it into sort of this other, gestalt product where we have this love story, we have this interesting interplay with all these characters. We meet a whole bunch of people that are all fabrications, but they represent the period, they represent the attitudes. And it's kind of neat to be sort of privy to that time period and see a romance set to that sort of tone, and then have it all sort of intertwined with the issues of the boat. And so, and we also get to see some hypothetical possibilities of how the whole accident might have gone down, and who knew and when, and what they did about it. But it has these two storylines. So right after. So what's happening is Billy Zane says, find my girlfriend, lock her in her bedroom. I'm tired of this crap. She's being very immature. And so they run away, right? She flips off the bodyguard and they go running through the boat. And this is kind of metaphorically also their escape from their previous world, right? Together as a new, pair that presumably are going to end up together. When they open up that last door and they leave the engine room, they end up in the cargo bulkhead in the bowels of the ship, and there's a bunch of stuff that's being stored there, cars and pallets of supplies and equipment and things that are being hauled across the ocean. They find a hiding place in one of the automobiles that's being shipped to America, and they hop inside and they have a romantic moment. Let's put it that way. Okay. And that is Rose's turning point for sure, because part of her whole being a debutante and being sort of matched with this really wealthy guy was that she was coming from a family that had a name and that she was unspoiled, right? And these, turn of the previous century ideals were placed in very high regard and valued very highly, right? But if she sleeps with Leo, that's all out the window, right? Because we find out through the course of some conversation that the family name that Rose bears isn't as great as it seems on the outside. The father died and left them in a lot of debt. Part of the reason why she's being paired with this rich guy is she'll get a living allowance. She'll be able to take care of the mother. They will blend their fortunes, so to speak, and their money worries will be over. And she will be a suitable wife and mother and child bearer for this wealthy Wall Street aristocrat, right? This money guy. But if she sleeps with Leo, that's out the window, right? So she does. They have their moment in the car, right? That's it. She seals it. And after that scene, when they come out on deck in the light of day, that's when she tells him, when we dock in America, I'm leaving with you. I'm done with the old life. I'm leaving with you. So that then this whole scene was the turning point of that storyline that runs parallel to the boat sinking, right? Well, this is happening right after, or kind of during, we see kind of during, because Cameron extends this moment as well, like Spielberg. But what he does is he kind of laces the storylines a little bit better, I think, than Steven did in Jaws, because he had all these problems, you know, putting the movie together after the fact. In this case, Cameron kind of goes in, he already knows what he wants to do, and he has laced these storylines together more efficiently, so that at the same time that Leo and Rose are running away from David Warner, the guys see the iceberg. They're trying to talk to the radio operators in the next closest ship, the SS California, and those guys are all drunk and partying, and they don't get the call for information or weather reports. And then, oops, there's an iceberg. We can't turn in time. Bang, we hit the thing. Water's coming in. The boat starts sinking. Okay, so that's the turning point for the story arc of the vessel itself. So here's that moment, and you can take a look at that after the commercial break.
Pick up, you bastards!
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what do you see?
Iceberg, right ahead!
Thank you.
Iceberg, right ahead! Oh, the stop! Stop! No! Stop me! Hey! Pull us down! Hold over! Hold that over, sir! Don't let go! Get down! Get down! Shut all the dampers! Shut them! Hold it! Hold it! Now! Engage the reversing engine! Engine up! Why are they turning? Is it hard over? It is, yes, sir, hard over. It's gonna hit! in it. Smell ice, can ya? Bleeding Christ.
Wawa has even more options with delivery curbside.
Okay. It's kind of funny because every time that guy's legs get pulled under the door, I wins. Every time I see it, doesn't matter how many times. But you can see in this moment, it's kind of interesting. You don't see in the clip, in this particular clip, but right before they hit the iceberg, right? You saw Leo and Rose, or Jack and Rose, they're kissing, right? And the boat hits the iceberg and they're like, what? It was right before that kiss, in that moment when they emerged from below decks, that she says, I'm going back with you. I'm leaving. I forget Billy's name in the movie, but I'm leaving him and I'm going with you, right? And they kiss, lovey, lovey, and then bang, the boat hits the iceberg. It's like bang, 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 right? And then you can see in all these cuts how everybody's life is about to change. That, you know, the world up to that point has been a very glassy, comfortable, idyllic journey across the ocean. And in the case of the boat's story arc, what we have in terms of an inciting incident, I think if you could call it that, is in the beginning of the film, after they're kind of underway, right? The captain has a meeting with several of the important people that are involved with the cruise line or with the business interests of the cruise line. The engineer is there. The publicist for the shipping lines is at this meeting, this dinner meeting. And they all convince the captain, you know, what a magnificent vessel this is. And they're all congratulating the engineer who designed her and the captain who is in charge of it. And they're like, what a magnificent vessel, you know, what a historic trip we're making. And they're all toasting one another and feeling really good about themselves. And then you can call it a question, but it's really an assertion is made. Well, as landmark of an event as this is, we could double the potency of the event by not only being the first transatlantic luxury liner, but we could do it in record time. Okay. And then right there is a moment where the captain is forced into making a choice or taking a plan of action that he might not have done, which is he's now going to push this vessel to its limits of performance and try to get into New York Harbor a day or two earlier than they had projected that they would arrive. And as a result of that, even though they have ideal conditions and the waters are calm and the boat is performing fairly well, that seed of an inciting incident comes home to roost when the kid spots the iceberg. And if they had been traveling at the speed that they normally would have been traveling, which is 3/4 speed instead of full speed, they would have had the time to turn and miss grazing what was under the water. But instead, they were traveling faster than they were supposed to. They spotted the iceberg with the right amount of time at proper speed, but given the speed adjustment, they spotted the iceberg too late and they hit it. Had the captain stuck to his guns in that conversation in the beginning and said, I'm not pushing this vessel like that. I'm going to do what I know is right. I've been at sea for 30 years. We're going to go 3/4 speed. And that's final. He acquiesces. And when he does, he dooms the vessel. He doesn't know it yet, but he dooms the vessel. We know it because it's a historical fact. The Titanic hit an iceberg and it sank, and it did it a long time ago, right? We know that as the audience, but we know now that the captain has doomed the vessel. The parallel storyline, the lovers, you could say the inciting incident there was Leo wins the ticket in a poker game. He didn't have the money to buy a ticket initially. He was just hanging around the docks to see if there was an opportunity he could take advantage of. He wins a ticket on the Titanic in poker, and his life is changing. And he and his buddy hop the boat, and they go to America, or they head to America, right? Interestingly enough, even though that's a parallel storyline, when the boat hits the iceberg, Jack and Rose's lives also change, and all the plans that they're making, all the romantic ideas that they have of a life together are now in jeopardy because the boat's going to sink and they're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, you know, it doesn't look good, right? How do you survive something like this? The boat is sinking and there's no other boat. So their lives are going to change as well, but they don't know that this is indelible, that Jack is going to end up drowning and that she is going to end up surviving alone for a time. And she has to then make the rest of the trip to America as a survivor of a disaster instead of a young lover with promise, or as a newlywed to a rich aristocrat. So it's interesting the way sort of Titanic has all these threads that are kind of, interweaving like so, and they balance nicely. They've been figured out very nicely. They tie together with precision, right? It's not as messy as Jaws. Jaws is very entertaining. The story ended up, I think, being very compelling, what ended up on the film. But gosh, if you had to predict how that film was going to do by the documents and the between the novel, all of the different versions of the script, and then for physical production, nobody, including the studio execs and the crew, thought that Jaws was going to be anything but an utter disaster. And Steven was the only one who believed and stuck to his guns, and he had a really good editor that helped him out of a lot of problems. The other two films, Jurassic Park, I think everything that Steven learned from Jaws, he applied to production on Jurassic Park, and therefore Jurassic Park is a much more seamless presentation. And in terms of King Kong, you can see in a lot of ways how Peter Jackson was heavily influenced by the work of his predecessor, Steven Spielberg, because King Kong feels a lot like the structure of Jaws or Jurassic Park. We meet the antagonist the same way, and it's the same lead up. When we're waiting for Kong to emerge from the woods, if you put your head in that space of the T-Rex paddock, we saw the T-Rex for the first time almost the same way. The trees are rustling, the wind picks up, it's night exterior, and somebody is waiting in anticipation of the unknown, which is making noise in the jungle and about to emerge, right? In the one movie, it's the T-Rex, and in the next movie, it's the ape, right? It kind of happens the same way. So it's in a lot of ways, it's an homage of meeting the T-Rex, right? 20 years earlier, or well, not 20 years earlier, but like maybe 6 years earlier, something like that, 7 years earlier. So, and you can do this with a lot of films. Like you can do this with Fight Club, and hopefully, take your own favorite film and see if it conforms the same way. You might find that it does. And if it does, this is a sign of, like I said in the beginning, a well-balanced script that has followed the structure faithfully, understands how a story should unfold, firmly understands the protagonist and what their arc needs to be, knows the beginning and the middle and the end, and is dedicated to linking the premise with the plot to make sure that it all flows. And so that's a mark of a good script, a good filmmaker, a good collaboration. The last thing I'll have you do, and I won't do it here because it's time to let you all go, is check this thing out on Collateral. It's a really great video composition. This guy, Michael from Lessons from the Screenplay, does a really good job. I like his videos a lot. And this dives into the characters, Jamie Foxx's character, Tom Cruise's character, what they both want, what their arcs are, where the midpoint is, where there's the point of no return, how they learn from each other, how their values and their inner motivations flip flop. It's a really interesting analysis, and I hope you enjoy it. Otherwise, your homework will be to check out the Screenwriter's Bible. It's book 1, so it's the first section of the book, The Magnificent 7 Plot Points, it's called. It covers pages 22 to 50, but you don't have to read all those pages. It's just the pages on midpoint or turning point that I want you to look closely at, okay? So it's maybe half this volume of actual reading, maybe less than half. I don't have any significant PDFs to offer you this week, but like I said, please watch the video, watch Collateral, the Midpoint Collision, and watch the Michael Hogue analysis of Point of No Return. I think you'll find that very interesting. He's very helpful. And if you go to his website, you'll see all the other assets he has to offer in terms of screenwriting, you know, tradecraft and tips and tricks. Okay. That's what I have for you. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or anything on the issue of midpoint or turning point? Jamaica, you're good. I'm assuming that Sean is good. Mariah, what do you think? Even though you didn't see Titanic, have you seen the other three?
I've seen Jaws, and
well, that's good.
And the other one was I have not seen Kong, but like your argument was very like well defined, so it is like easy for me to follow along through like you proving that the point of no return is exactly in the middle of the script.
Well, more or less, right? Within a few pages. What's your favorite film? Do you have one? Do you have, you know, a top 10 like that are equally weighted? That's kind of me. I don't have a single favorite film, but
I gotta like go to my list because I always forget. I really like Edward Scissorhands. It's probably one of my favorites.
Okay, it's been a while since I saw that film. Wow. Trying to think
what
of
about
what the midpoint is with Edward. Maybe when he gets the job and he gets integrated into the town, because he's a recluse before that point.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if you kind of went and took a look at Edward Scissorhands and see if you can get a copy of the script. So you have Internet Movie Script Database, you can access scripts. You straight up Google free PDF of screenplay Edward Scissorhands and see what you get. You could also, it's not hard to get a script. If you get like a transcript, which is not always the same thing as a properly formatted script, what I discovered is you can copy and paste that document into Final Draft and it will format it for you.
Oh, really? Oh, okay,
at least pretty close to what it should be. So that makes it easy if you can't find the actual collated and formatted script. And see, you know, count the number of pages. The number of scenes and the number of pages don't necessarily have to match up, because a scene might only be 1/8 of a page on paper, but it might take up 10 minutes of screen time. So you can't quite be it's not a reliable gauge. Use the page count, the total page count, and then compare that to the scene count. So like if there's only 100 scenes and 120 pages of script, your moment should happen at scene 50, like it did in Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park had 100 scenes on 120 pages, and bang, scene 50 was the paddock where we see T-Rex for the first time. And he nails it, like right spot on. So see if Edward Scissorhands does the same thing. Anybody else?
Okay.
I saw you shifting in your seat, Ben. Does that mean you had something to offer, or were you just readjusting the blood flow?
Just readjusting.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add, offer, questions to ask before I let you all go? No? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'm going to put it up online. I have argued 3 times now with YouTube, and I have won my appeals each time about copywritten material in my presentation, and it's all fair use for educational analysis. That is the argument. It's section 106, 107 of US Code of Copyright Law, I believe it is. I've got a copy of it if anybody's interested in seeing it. But I will put this up on YouTube and link it to web courses as soon as I clear the appeals process, which usually only takes a day or so. So it'll be up. Thankfully, you all have come to the live session, so you know what has been discussed here. And in the meantime, if anybody needs to see it before the appeal clears, I will have a copy of it that I can embed in web courses if need be. Okay. So that's it. So I move to adjourn unless anybody has anything more to add. All right, then. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time and attention. Hope you have a good afternoon, and I will see you Thursday for a workshop.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.